Greetings. The book of Revelation is a complicated grouping of critical end-time information. Now, God uses Revelation to add the final details to the prophecies written in earlier books of the Bible. The best way to understand this book is to compare sections of Revelation with older prophecies. Jesus, in Matthew 24, says to use this process for understanding. Matthew 24:15. When you see the abomination of desolation, a strange combination of words, but Daniel wrote about the abomination of desolation. So Jesus says, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, way back in the book of Daniel, standing in the holy place, then Jesus adds this little section, whoever reads Matthew 24, let him understand what Daniel wrote about the abomination of desolation. So we understand Daniel first. So anyone reading Matthew 24:15 should come to this let him understand and stop reading Matthew 24 and go back and read Daniel and his sections on the abomination of desolation to get a solid understanding. Then come back to Matthew 24 to understand how Jesus is tying the two together. Today, we will cover 4 time periods that describe events in 2024 and events that lead up to the Battle of Armageddon and the coming of Jesus Christ. The first string of events to occur before the start of the Great Tribulation include World War III and its combatants, such as, surprise coming here, America, Russia, China, Israel, and the Arab nations, all tied together in a World War III situation. The second string of events covers the abomination war. It's not just an abominable thing, it's an abomination war on the people of Israel. And the second thing it covers is the Great Tribulation. The third grouping covers the Battle of Armageddon. People talk about that all the time. They don't really know what it means. We'll look at the details from the Bible. And the second part of that is Jesus taking control of all nations on planet Earth. The fourth string of events covers the 1,000 years of peace and prosperity for all nations that Jesus is going to bring and force on humanity. Now we look at the first group of events that describe what will be happening from today until the end of the Arab-Israel war. Today in the news you see frequent discussions of how we're going to end the war. What will it look like when we end the war? Will we have a 2-state solution when we end the war? Well, God tells us how it all works out. God told us that this current Arab-Israel war would be happening in the end times just before Christ comes to rule all nations. Daniel 11 verse 40 says, at the time of the end, in the period just before the end of the age of man, at the time of the end, the king of the north shall come against him, the king of the south, like a whirlwind with many ships. Great clue there, many ships. Verse 41, he, the same king of the north, with many ships, shall enter the glorious land, that's Israel. He'll go with his troops into the glorious land. And at the same time, many Arab nations shall be overthrown and captured. So what have we got now? We've got Israel in peril, being attacked by many Arab nations, right? We've got American ships in the area shooting down missiles, helping protect. So this Arab-Israeli war that we see in the TV news will end when many Arab nations are captured. His entering Israel is also mentioned again in a different place, slightly different place, in Daniel 11:15 and 16. Daniel 11:15 says, so the king of the north shall come, and the forces of the south shall not withstand him, won't be able to stand against it. his choice troops shall have no strength to resist. So super powerful army troops. Daniel 11:16. No one shall stand against him. He'll be dominant. And he shall stand in the glorious land, Israel, with great power. Now, if you're going to capture many Arab nations, you're going to need great power. These two verses are a puzzle piece that fits with Daniel 11, verse 40. At the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack, and the king of the north shall come against him with the whirlwind, with many ships, and he shall enter the countries and overwhelm them. Verse 41, then he shall enter the glorious land, Israel. Many Arab nations shall be overthrown. Verse 42, he shall stretch out his hand against the many countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. So now we have the name of one of the nations that's going to be overthrown. Egypt. We all know about Egypt. We all know where it is. We all know some of its history. Verse 43, he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver and over all the precious things of Egypt, and also the Libyans and the Ethiopians. Now we have three of the many Arab nations mentioned by name. In World War II, Hitler invaded France and took total control of all the precious things of France. So that gives you a picture of what this will be like when it happens when Egypt gets captured. Now, a quick summary of these verses: in the end times, meaning the years just before the coming of Christ to earth, when he takes control of all nations, a mighty nation with many ships, very important to think of through, many ships, will enter the land of Israel. Why? Why enter the land? To help protect, while at the same time capturing Egypt and many other Arab nations. Now, our TV broadcasts show us many American ships near Israel right now shooting down incoming rockets. When Iraq attacked and conquered Kuwait, a little bit of history here, back in 1991-92, many American ships back in those days were used to enter Kuwait, put troops, American troops and other troops, into Kuwait to force back and to save them from the invading Iraqi army. America now has many naval ships near Israel to help protect Israel against the many missile attacks from several Arab nations. It's happening. It's happening just like the Bible tells it, only the Bible tells it in minute, just a tiny bit of detail, and the news gives you day by day development of the war. The Bible shows that this current localized war will expand and result in many Arab nations being overthrown and captured. Now, while future American troops will be fighting to save Israel, two giant enemy nations will attack American assets. How do we know that? Verse 44 of Daniel 11. But news from the east. Now, when you hear news from the east, you have to do a little, computation. If he's in Israel, Jerusalem, he's in the city, he's in the nation of Israel, then news from the east of Jerusalem means what? China is east of Jerusalem. Look on a world map. Here's Jerusalem. East of Jerusalem is China. And north of Jerusalem. What's north of Jerusalem? Russia. The two great enemies of the United States. Shall trouble him. He hears news. He gets this news report. Trouble him. And therefore he shall go out with great fury. So this is very troublesome news that causes him, the American leader, to go out with great fury and to destroy and annihilate. You've got to remember those words. Destroy and annihilate many. Many who? Russia and China. Question: what could Russia and China do to cause such a powerful reaction? Revelation shows an event that would make any commander-in-chief furious. Revelation 8:8. This is what I say. Revelation is giving the final details to help explain earlier scriptures. Revelation 8:8. And then the second trumpet angel, second angel sounded, and in the sequence it means the second trumpet. And something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood. Well, that's pretty startling. We could ponder and wonder what that is. Back in Moses' day, right, Moses turned the Nile River to blood. So it's one of the things that God can do, yes. But, verse 9, a third of the living creatures in the sea died. And then the final capstone of this verse, a third of the ships were destroyed. Now what do we have? We have three incredible events. This three-part horror event destroys many naval ships, right? You could think, well, just regular ships. Okay, if it's a wartime, it's more likely to be naval ships, making the American leadership furious. Almost no one talks about Russia's fleet killer weapon. It's been talked about occasionally on the radio and on news, but it's very seldom talked about frequently in the news as this kind of fleet-killing weapon that Russia had built and sold to China many, many, many years ago, and has just been sitting there waiting for a day when they might use it. This is a nuclear weapon specifically designed to destroy American aircraft carriers and the fleet that surrounds each carrier. When North Korea erupted, little rocket man back a couple of years ago, then the President of the United States sent 3 aircraft carrier fleets, 3 of them. Aircraft carrier has immense firepower. The ships that travel with an aircraft carrier have immense firepower. So it's an enormous show of force. And then the little rocket man, the North Korean leader, he became friends with Trump and eventually invited Trump to step into North Korea. But 3 aircraft carrier groups, fleets, is a very impressive show of force. Again, God uses Revelation to add missing puzzle pieces that show the result of Daniel 11:44. Revelation 8:12. A fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them was darkened, and a third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. Now, taken by itself, that one verse is very puzzling. Question: what is this verse telling us? A quick Google search will show that nuclear winter is where debris particles from nuclear blasts block humans from seeing the sun, the moon, and the stars. So, did God have, back in Revelation 2,000 years ago, God in just one verse described the result of nuclear winter? You can look it up in Google. You can understand that there's going to be a nuclear war because so many countries have nuclear weapons now, and Russia keeps threatening to use nuclear weapons on America if they don't stay in line, which is just really saber rattling, but the threat is there and a lot of people shaking their boots. Revelation 8:12 is telling us there will be a nuclear war that blocks the seeing of the sun, the moon, and the stars from the vantage point of being on earth. And 2 verses after verse 44, God describes the Great Tribulation. So, and that's in Daniel 12, verse 1. At that time, there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. Now, Jesus uses similar language back in Matthew 24, such as to forewarn that the Great Tribulation is about to happen. Matthew 24:21. For then will be great tribulation, such as not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. What is he saying? This is going to be the worst time of trouble humanity has ever known. there's a nuclear war, guess what? That will help contribute to the worst time ever for humans. Verse 22, unless those days would be shortened or curtailed, no flesh would be saved. No humans would be left alive, because as scientists have been saying for hundreds of years, no, for decades, we have enough nuclear weapons stockpiled to destroy planet Earth like 10 or 20 times over. And Jesus goes on to say, but for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened or curtailed by Jesus Christ. When he comes, he's going to stop the further destruction of planet Earth and start reversing the negative effects. So the second string of events covers the abomination and the 30-day war leading to the Great Tribulation. Most people have heard the abomination of desolation. They don't realize that it's the day before the beginning of a 30-day war that totally destroys Israel. And at the end of that 30-day war, the tribulation of Revelation begins. Revelation 11:2 says the holy city Jerusalem will be trodden underfoot. Okay, pretty much any city anywhere in the world gets trodden underfoot. But God has a special meaning for that, and we see that in Revelation 11:2. And they, the Gentiles, will tread the holy city underfoot. The Gentiles, not the Jewish people, not God's people, God's nation, but the holy city will be trodden underfoot, just like France was trodden underfoot by the Germans for 42 months, which in biblical time is 3.5 years. So how do we understand this verse? Luke 21 verse 24 gives us the answer to Revelation 11:2. Luke 21:24 says, they shall fall by the edge of the sword, talking about Israel, and be led away captive, prison camps, into all nations. Now, Hitler led away a whole bunch of Jews to prison camps in World War II. So it's not surprising that it could happen again, right? And Jerusalem will be trampled by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles is fulfilled. Well, Luke, when you read Luke, you go, well, how long is the time of the Gentiles? And then we just saw Revelation 11:2 adds how long equals 3.5 years or 42 months. So, does Israel win this battle? Daniel 12, verse 7. Now this is the battle, not the current battle. This is the battle after the day of the abomination of desolation. Daniel 12:7 shows that Israel, as a nation, is totally destroyed and hence is trodden underfoot for 3.5 years. Daniel 12, verse 7, then the man clothed in linen swore by him who lives forever, by God, that it shall be for a time and times and half a time, in God's economy, in God's calendar, that's 3.5 years, from the power of the holy people being completely shattered. So the 30-day war, at the end of the 30-day war, the power of Israel is totally shattered. They're either dead from the edge of the sword in battle, or they've been captured and sent away to prison camps around the world. Then all these things will be finished. The end of the age of man and the beginning of the age of Christ ruling all nations. So when our news channels report that Israel is no more, now we can know once the news says Israel has been destroyed, once you see that on TV, we can know that God has said there's 3.5 more years, and Christ will then appear on earth. Now we don't know the day or the hour, but we can know the week, right? We can see that from the two witnesses. Question: what does Jesus tell people to do on Abomination Day? Matthew 24, verse 15. Therefore, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel and the prophet standing in the holy place in Jerusalem, verse 16, let those who are in Judea, Israel, flee to the mountains on that same day. Verse 17, Him who is on the housetop, let him not go down and take anything out of his house. If you're going to flee to the mountains, you would want to take something out of your house to the mountains, because it's going to get cold in the mountains in the next 3.5 years. Verse 20 says, pray that your flight not be in the wintertime or on the Sabbath. Verse 21, there will be great tribulation. Yeah, there'll be a war that destroys Israel, such as not been since the beginning of the world, no, until this time never has been. So there's that worst time of trouble. Daniel spoke of it. Jesus repeats it in his Matthew 24 dissertation. Israel will suffer great tribulation and the destruction of their nation during a 30-day war. Then the world will suffer great tribulation, great trouble, for 3.5 years more, and then Christ will appear after that 3.5 years. So after Abomination Day comes a 30-day war that destroys the nation of Israel, and then begins the Great Tribulation for 3.5 years. Daniel 12 verse 11, from the time the daily sacrifice is taken away, that's the same day as the abomination of desolation is set up, there shall be 1,290 days. And we all know how long a day is. A day is 24 hours, right? So you do the multiplication in God's calendar, that's that's 1,290 days is 3.5 years plus 30 days. And then comes Christ. So many do not realize that Jesus must come to stop all humans from dying. Again, Revelation provides detail on the state of the world just before Jesus arrives. Revelation 11:18, the nations were angry, and you should reward your servants and destroy those who are destroying the earth. Like I say, nuclear war is a definite way to destroy the earth. After the 30-day war, Satan is activated and then oversees the first woe, which is the fifth trumpet of the 7 trumpets. Revelation talks about 7 trumpets. The fifth one is the first woe. We see what that's like. Revelation 8:13. And I heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, then woe, then woe. It says woe 3 times to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the remaining blasts of the trumpet of the 3 angels who are about to sound. So trumpet 5 is the first woe, trumpet 6 is the second woe, trumpet 7 is the third woe, 3 woes. So trumpet 5, the first woe is trumpet, and then comes trumpet 6, the second woe, and those 2 are the tribulation period. Now we look at the first woe, Revelation 9:1. The 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star, meaning an angel, fall from heaven to earth, and to him was given the key to the bottomless pit. Bottomless pit is biblical language for where Satan gets locked away. And the key is to open it and to release things from the bottomless pit. Verse 2, and he opened the bottomless pit, and smoke arose out of the pit like smoke of a great furnace. So the sun and the air were darkened because of the smoke of the pit. Verse 3, then out of the smoke, locusts, now remember John is having a vision, locusts came upon the earth, and to them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. Well, if you've ever been stung by a scorpion, you know the power that little teeny tiny, ugly looking animal has when he stings you. Now some scorpions can kill you. They're potent venom, but in most cases, certainly in Texas, a scorpion sting doesn't kill you. It just is a super powerful amount of pain. Verse 5, they were not given authority to kill them, but to torment them for 5 months. This is really strange, and when you read this, it's like you just get a headache, because how can you sting somebody and for 5 months, right? And verse 6 says, in those days men will seek death and will not find death. And you think, well, there's a whole bunch of ways you can kill yourself. You can stop eating for 5 months. There's lots of ways to commit suicide, but they seek death and they will not find it. curious. And they will desire to die, and death will flee from them. Well, this is complicated, but we're told that Satan is the king over this horror event. So it's a satanic thing. Revelation 9:11 says the king over them was the angel from the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, but in Greek his name is Apollyon. Verse 12 says, one woe is past and two more woes are coming. Now, when one studies woe number one, it sounds like, think about it, a chemical weapons attack. Right? If it's a neuro poison or something where it paralyzes you, right? Something that paralyzes you you can stay alive, but you don't have the power to commit suicide. In Revelation 13:2, God tells us that the Hitler-like beastly human leader is given great powers by Satan, the devil himself. So it's when it happens, it'll be obvious. It'll fulfill these scriptures perfectly. Revelation 13:2. Now the beast, which I saw, was like a leopard, and the dragon, Bible language for Satan the devil, gave him his power, his throne, and his authority. Now, picture Satan, a great archangel, right, a fallen archangel who has immense power, has a spirit being body, gives this human person, this Hitler-like person, it gives him his power, and we don't fully understand that, and his throne. What's that? That's great authority. All right. So Satan helps a human being become Superman, if you will. The second major portion of the Great Tribulation is called the second woe, and that's the sixth trumpet. In Revelation 9:13, the sixth angel sounded. 16 says the number of the army of the horsemen was 200 million. And then John, most people, I hear people say this every now and then, hey, no one nation has 200 million men under arms. No, but if you put all of Europe together, there's like 800 or 900 million people living in Europe right now. So you could put together a 200 million army in the near future. And John says, I heard the number of them. So John saw the vision. He didn't have to sort of count 200 million. Somebody whispered in his ear and said, it's 200 million. So he wrote down 200 million. Thus I saw horses in vision, and the heads of the horses were like the heads of lions, and out of their mouths came fire, smoke, and brimstone. Verse 18, by these three plagues, a third of mankind was killed. Now you understand why it's a woe for humanity, because a third of what's remaining of the population of planet Earth is going to be killed by this 200 million man army, and by the smoke and the fire and the brimstone that came out of their mouths. So a quick summary. Event period 1 shows many Arab nations get captured and Russia and China get destroyed. Event period 2 shows the abomination, the 30-day war that destroys Israel, and the first two woes of the Great Tribulation. So now we come to the third event time period, showing two parts of the third woe. The first part of this is the seven last plagues. So Jesus appears at the end of the tribulation. The second woe is over. Jesus appears. His appearing is the beginning of the third woe. And the first thing he does is pours out the seven last plagues. And the second part is the well-known term, the Battle of Armageddon. Just people don't know what it really means, and we see what it means. The seven last plagues begin when the tribulation period ends at the coming of Christ Jesus. Revelation 11:15, the seventh angel sounded. There were loud voices saying, the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord, that's God the Father, and of his Christ, that's Jesus Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. Revelation gives us a graphic image of this very moment in Revelation 6 verse 14. It says, then the sky receded as a scroll when it is rolled up. It's like the sky, blue sky, black sky at night, just goes wide open, and people look up, and it tells us what they see. Verse 15, the kings of the earth and the great men and the rich men and the commanders and the mighty men and every slave and every free man, pretty much every human being on earth. And verse 16, and they said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us, hide us from, and now we get a very unusual description. Hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne. So the sky scrolls back, people look up, they see the face of the great one, God the Father, sitting on a throne in heaven, and from the wrath of the Lamb. The wrath of the Lamb is Jesus Christ coming back to pour out the 7 last plagues. This is the moment when humanity looks up, sees God the Father on the throne, they see the Lamb of God, Jesus Christ, on a white horse, right? It's like, wait, he doesn't come in Battleship Galactica, he doesn't come in some super duper man-made device. No, he just comes riding on a white horse. And that's what we find in Revelation 19:11. Now I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on him was called Faithful and True, and he judges and makes war. Jesus is coming to destroy those who are destroying planet Earth, and to destroy Satan's evil man-made, right? I mean, Satan civilized the power, but it's Satan's evil empire and the things that are done because of Satan's power. Revelation 19:14. The armies of angels in heaven, clothed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. John writes about God's wrath and the 7 last plagues in Revelation 15, verse 1. Then I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them the wrath of God is complete. So after the 7th bowl or plague is poured out, then it's the end of the battle of Armageddon, and God's wrath is over, and God's now happy with what's left of humanity, and he's going to help put humanity back into peaceful, prosperous, abundant lifestyles. Revelation 16:2. The first went and poured out his bowl on the earth, and the foul, loathsome sore came upon the men who had the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. If you read more of the book of Revelation, you'll see there's a great worship thing set up to where if you don't worship the beast and his image, then they kill you. And this is where 200 million man army kills a third of mankind. Verse 3, the second angel poured out his bowl on the sea, and it became blood as of a dead man, and every living creature in the sea died. So again, God can do it, but to destroy all the ships in the sea, man can do that with nuclear weapons. Verse 8, then the fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and power was given to him to scorch men with fire or great heat from the sun. Number 10, Revelation 16:10. Then the fifth angel poured out his bowl on the throne of the beast, and his kingdom became full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues because of the pain. So these, darkness. I mean, we've all had a situation in darkness. We may have been in a cave, and they turned out the lights, and you can't see your hand in front of your face. It's just dark, dark, dark. Well, this is a painful darkness that probably none of us have ever experienced. This is the first part of the third woe being poured out on the rebellious, evil empire. At the sixth angel, we see God's preparation for the great battle of Armageddon. Revelation 16:12. Then the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its waters dried up, so that the way of the kings from the east might be prepared. So this is not a punishment thing. This is a advance your armies across the river Euphrates without having to build bridges. He'll just dry up the river, and it'll be a dry riverbed. Now you can drive tanks, and you can drive army trucks and all sorts of vehicles down into the bottom of the river and up the other side of the river and not have to worry about, stalling out all your engines. The evil empire's army then quickly crosses the river Euphrates, headed for the last camping grounds before the Battle of Armageddon. Revelation 16:16. And they gathered them together in a place called, in Hebrew, Armageddon. But if you go back and look at the Hebrew definition behind that, it just means the valley of Jezreel in Israel, which is a huge, wide area of a flat valley, perfect for bivouacking, setting up camp for millions of soldiers. God does not describe the Battle of Armageddon here because he had already described it thousands of years before the book of Revelation in the book of Zechariah. Most people don't know how to find the book of Zechariah, but it's one of the last books of the Old Testament. Zechariah 14:1 says, "Behold, the day of the Lord is coming." Verse 2, "I will gather all the nations to battle against Jerusalem." So drying up the river Euphrates is how he helps to gather them quickly down towards the battle that's going to be near Jerusalem as they attack Christ in Jerusalem. Verse 3, "Then the Lord will go forth and fight against those nations as he fights in the day of battle." Then in verse 12, he gives a description of what the battle will look like. So if you want a short description, a fairly concise description, but a powerful description of what the Battle of Armageddon is all about, you need to turn to Zechariah chapter 14. It's only a short verse, and just read it verse for verse for verse, and you're going to see a bird's eye view of the Battle of Armageddon. Zechariah 14:12. "This shall be the plague with which the Lord strikes the people who fought against Jerusalem. Their flesh shall dissolve while they stand on their feet." That's a pretty ugly picture, but that's how it's written. So think about that for a second. Then it says, "Their eyes shall dissolve in their sockets." Whoa. And then it says, "Their tongues shall dissolve in their mouths." So put that picture in your mind. This is God pouring out his anger on the evil empire. Zechariah 14:13. "It shall come to pass in that day a great panic from the Lord will be amongst those who don't melt and just die of dissolving," right? Those who don't dissolve, they will have a great panic, and everyone will seize the hand of his neighbor and raise his hand against his neighbor's hand. And God's done this. Back in the Old Testament, when there were a huge army attacking Israel, God did miracles and got them so panicky they just started killing whoever was next to them, which was their own soldier group, right? So at this point, the Battle of Armageddon is over when all these enemy soldiers are dead, and Jesus begins rebuilding a peaceful, abundant set of human lifestyles all over the planet. So now we come to the time period number 4. This is good news, which covers 1,000 years of no wars. No human armies will be having wars with other human armies, killing and slaughtering people by the hundreds of thousands. And after Jesus defeats the evil empire, he becomes king over all the kings of planet Earth. Revelation 17:14. "These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of all the kings of planet Earth." Verse 4. "And I saw," this is Revelation 20, verse 4, "and I saw thrones, and they sat on them, and they lived, and they reigned with Christ for 1,000 years." This is peace, beautiful, happy people living for 1,000 years and enjoying their Creator God being with them. Revelation 20, verse 6, "And they shall be priests of God and of Christ, and they shall reign with him for 1,000 years." So they'll be kings and priests helping serve other human beings. Again, Revelation gives additional truth fragments that fit perfectly with the prophecies from thousands of years ago. The main purpose for the book of Revelation is to tie it all together. Isaiah 9:6, "For unto us a child is born, and unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. It's God is not coming to be mean to people except the evil empire, and after that he's coming to regenerate and rejuvenate and bring peace and happiness and joy to what's left of mankind. Verse 7, of the increase of his government and of peace, because there'll be no more war. There shall be no end. As the new king over all nations, Jesus will make his capital city an example for all nations to follow. Jesus uses Isaiah to write this. Isaiah 65 verse 18, be glad and rejoice forever in what I create, says Jesus, for I create Jerusalem a rejoicing. A city is going to be a rejoicing. Just picture that, right? And her people a joy. I will rejoice in Jerusalem and joy in my people, and the voice of weeping shall no longer be heard in her in the city, nor the voice of crying. It's just going to be a happy people living happy lives. Revelation adds more details of the Jesus plan for rebuilding the nations. Revelation 22 verse 2. In the middle of its street and on either side of the river was a tree of life, which bore 12 fruits. These are unusual trees. Each tree yielding its fruit every month. 12 fruits, 12 months, each month a different fruit. Wow, we've never seen. God is the creator. God can create these in a heartbeat if he wants to and when he wants to. The leaves of the trees for the healing of the nations. God is coming back to planet Earth to heal the nations after the worst time of human history and a lot of horror and a lot of dead people. When Jesus is king over all nations, the world, the new world, will be nothing like our world today. God is creator. He can change stuff. Isaiah 11:6, the wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, the leopard shall lie down with the young goat and not eat them, and the little child shall lead these animals that currently would tear each other to pieces. Verse 7, the cow and the bear shall graze together safely, and their young ones shall lie down together, and the lion, you don't want to meet a lion in today's world, the lion shall eat straw like an ox, it'll eat grass like a cow. Jesus was the creator of the solar system and the whole universe. The new world that he will create will be a paradise for young and old alike. He tells us about it in Isaiah 11:8. The nursing child shall play by the cobra's hole, cobra, deadly snake, and the weaned child shall put his hand on a viper's den. Vipers, deadly snakes, right? But they won't be deadly anymore. They'll have their natures changed, like the lions will be changed from eating flesh to eating grass, like a cow. And so you can have a big 400-pound cow from eating grass. You'll be able to have good lions from eating grass. Verse 9, they shall not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain, and all the areas that God's kingdoms and rulerships are taking place. For the earth shall be full of the knowledge of God, of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, meaning King Jesus, who shall stand as a banner for the people. For the Gentiles will seek him, and his resting place shall be glorious. So Jesus is going to be sought after. Jesus' teachings will be eager to learn. People will be eager to learn them. There'll be no more war. There'll be peace and happiness. And this is Jesus' way of running the world as compared to humans' way, which has brought us nothing but more and more and more war, and then eventually nuclear war, and then the brink of self-destruction of humanity on planet Earth. So after horrifying chaos of the next few years, Jesus will save humanity from self-destruction and create a wonder world of joyous living for all nations. So this is the main point of the book of Revelation.